Hi everyone, I'm Chris, and it's just me today. Yay! Just kidding. Over the next 4 weeks, Brock and I are dedicating all of our videos to what we think is important for you all to get to know us, beginning with today's video, which is my coming out story, which, if I'm being completely honest, I'm really nervous about. I'm really nervous about. This is a story I feel like, at least for me, that I think only my family, Brock, and my closest friends, especially the ones that were there surrounding me at the time, know. And so this is kind of a big thing for me. So here goes. All in all, coming out was difficult for me. And it didn't really just land in one specific complete moment. It took me a few years for me to really fully embrace who I was and who I am and trust who I am and come out fully. But I also wanted to just say that in general, as difficult as it was for me, it ended up getting better for myself. And so for anyone who's feeling put down for who they are, I just want to say that I personally do believe that it does get better. And both Brock and I love you no matter what, even if we haven't met in person. But yeah, for me, coming out was a very big, long process. And the short version of it all is that I came out when I was 15. But I guess it's helpful to know a little background on who I am and how I was raised. So I grew up in a small city in California called Simi Valley. And for a majority of my childhood, I went to a private Christian school. I would say that probably I knew, or I had some inkling that I liked guys. And not necessarily girls, in middle school. And, you know, to be concise, middle school and freshman year and sophomore year were filled with a lot of teasing and bullying. So I knew that the way that people talked about being gay was negative to those people. And that was kind of all I experienced. The group of friends that I really hung out with, and I guess this is important because the environment that surrounded me as I was starting to think about my sexuality and think about my sexual orientation. The group of friends that I was with was all Christian, very devout, and at that time I was very religious too. But, you know, through the teasing and bullying and the moments that I just felt so put down, I would say that for a majority of my childhood I was very shy, socially anxious, and there came a tipping point for me of all the teasing and bullying when I had started to really think in sophomore year about who I was. And at that time, to be honest, I really didn't have any gay figures in my life or around me or in pop culture, at least from what I was viewing. I didn't have any resources available for me that I knew of. And so I was really just kind of grappling with this idea that I didn't really like all the girlfriends that I was having in that way. And I really wanted to be, I really started to like guys in this weird way that I really hadn't experienced before. And I joined track, and there was a moment where I came up to my gym bag and it had been defaced all over with the letters F-A-G. And that was the first time that I had anything defaced in such a big way. I had been already called that word so many times out in public, but it was so, I guess, easy at that point to let that go because once someone yelled it, it just kind of was done, even though it really hurt and, you know, really put me into a dark place at that time. This was just written all over in such a permanent marker, and I remember being so distraught. And I brought it up to my friends, and they said, well, you're not, and that's disgusting if you were, so don't worry about it. And I remember bringing it up to the administration at my high school, and the principal just told me that boys would be boys and that they couldn't figure out who it was and that there would be no point to figuring it out. And I went home and just cried. And that was a moment, I feel like, just because it was negative and it was hard, that it kind of pushed me into this direction that I started to really think about whether or not I was gay. And around that same time, I met this one girl named Christy, who would become my best friend. But she was so different from the group of friends that I hung out with, the conservative friends that I was always with. She was such a fire, and she had such a different perspective on the world. And it was the first time that I'd ever really hung out with someone that had been so expressively open. And I never really talked to her at this point about my thoughts or my feelings about being gay potentially. But she really was just so adamant about gay rights at that time. And I remember feeling so at home with that. And I don't even think at that time she even realized how much of an impact she had. But, you know, this progressed for about the end of sophomore year of me just kind of thinking about whether or not I was gay. And the school ended. I was at my grandma's for one weekend, and I just decided that I needed to get something off my chest. So I called up one of my friends from my friend group, and I don't know why I called her in particular. I think maybe it was because that she had always been so sweet to me that I kind of was hopeful that I would say that what I was feeling and she would be positive. Called her, talked about anything. I think probably like Finding Nemo was coming out or something like that. And then I said, hey, would you mind if I open up and I tell you something? And she said, of course, like you can tell me anything. And she listened, and I said, well, I think I might like boys. And I remember in that moment, there was so much pressure building up, and I was like so scared, and then suddenly I felt a release because I had just said finally what had been on my mind forever, and I had never told anyone. And I was like, oh my God. And she was just quiet, and then I heard some rustling of papers, and she started saying out some verses from the Bible, all about sinning and how the devil had consumed those who would sin in this way. And she then talked to me directly and said that the devil was within me and that the devil had taken over my body, that I was the devil incarnate. And I remember just feeling so upset because I had just been so happy, and then it wasn't the response that I had wanted, but I guess I can't say that I was surprised. And I remember just crying, and I told her I couldn't talk to her anymore. And I got off the phone and I just cried in that room all night. And for that, the next week, I just kind of hung out to myself. And it was just so quiet. And Christy, who had been such an adamant friend of mine at that moment, was calling me consistently, and I was ignoring it because I just really was dealing with it on my own. And I finally picked up, and she was like, can we please hang out? I was like, yeah, let's go for a walk around the park around my neighborhood. And I knew that I was going to tell her that I also thought I might like boys. Still, really wasn't knowledgeable enough or even thinking that I was like gay. I was like, I might like boys. And she came over, we went for a walk, and I was so scared, and told her that I might like boys, and she grabbed me and held me, and it was such a moment where I think as much as I cried when that girl on the phone told me that I was a devil, as much as I cried then, I cried more out of happiness because then I finally was feeling loved. And I don't even know if she really knows how much that moment was so important for me. But gosh, it was great. Over the summer, I ended up coming out. I felt like that was like a coming out tour for me, of just saying that I might like boys, or that at the time I finally ended up having a boyfriend during that summer too. And would tell people that I had a boyfriend, and I just never really said that I was gay. And came out to my dad first, which was surprising because I was way closer with my mom, and I was actually very terrified to tell my dad. And he ended up being super positive and grabbed me and held me and said that he was never been so proud. Same thing with my mom. And then my sister too, who was 10, and I cried to her because my boyfriend at the time had dumped me on instant messenger. I was heartbroken and came out to her too, and she was ecstatic. She was actually so happy. So that summer was like so great. I felt like I was starting to really come into my own, really starting to figure out who I was. And then first week of school comes around, and it's junior year. I remember getting to school early one day of the first week, and I went to my locker, and in my quad of lockers, I remember walking up and I was just seeing all these like flyers all around on the lockers. It's like, oh, what are those? Saw one that was also pasted also close to my locker, and it was a flyer with my face on it, school book photo with devil horns on it, and the word fag. And I remember like so quickly like tearing them down, and I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't gonna go to the administration because I didn't think that they would do anything, and I was just so hurt at that time. Just took him down so that no one would see. And that week I just got so quiet. I like went back to my like quiet, socially anxious phase, and it was these moments after that where suddenly I just felt like I'd come out, and it did feel like a lot of people knew. I don't know, really, I think it was like rather good gossip for my school. And I started to like, all these people started to come out of woodwork that wanted to talk to me and be friends with me that I'd never really been friends with before. I was always so quiet, always hung out to that one Christian group that those were my friends before, and now it was like a new fresh start, and all these people started coming out of the woodwork. One of them in particular actually was, her name was Lisa, and she would be the person that would become my best friend, and then would eventually introduce me to Brock, which is amazing. So I'm really happy that she came into my life at that moment, and I don't think these people understood how much of an impact they had on me when I was going through this moment where I came back to school and, these flyers, and then, weeks upon weeks I started getting these notes in my locker, with saying that I would die from AIDS, and that I was just mean things. These people didn't realize, I think, the impact that they had on me by just being so interested and happy to talk to me and loving, and it was great. I was going through a conflicting time because I was having like so much hostility thrown at me, but then I was having all these new friends that wanted to just get to know me and be so nice, and gosh, I could go on and list their names, and they're so great, and I love you all for all the impact that you had on me. But, you know, I went through this period, then that fall, homecoming comes around, and I'm like so surprised that my name gets put on the ballot, and I end up winning, and I'm like so happy. Oh my god, I was like a nothing, and I felt like suddenly I was like, oh my gosh, like this is fine. I'm gonna be fine. Like, my being gay is gonna be okay because people like me. And I remember telling my mom and my dad and all my friends, and I was so happy. And I was like, this is just a turning point. I was so excited. To the point when we got to that homecoming game and I walked up onto that stage and they said my name. Walked up. Some kid in the stands in the audience started to chant fag, and got a whole bunch of people also to start chanting. And it got to a point where it was so long, or at least it felt so long, and no one was quieting them down until they finally did. And it felt like all this progress that I had made in terms of loving myself and really accepting myself was just taken down by some random word that's chanted at me. And it's really hard at that time, but just went home. I just wanted to go home at that moment, and I just like rushed off stage as fast as I could. And then, gosh, cool. Like a week later, I don't know if she was intending for this, and I don't know if she really understands the importance of it, but Christy had this great idea. The way that my high school worked is for lunch, everyone sat around this huge quad where like all around, they would just, like this one grass, like this hill, people would just be all around like a circle. No one sat in the middle. And she had this idea that she wanted us to just sit in the middle for everyone to look at us. And this is like a week after the incident. And we sat there, and I don't, like as stupid as it is, as it sounds, like it just made me feel so good to just be like, you know what, like I'm here with someone who loves me, and you can watch me, and you can look at me, and you can say all the things that you want to say. I'm gonna sit here, and I'm gonna be safe and open. And it felt really good. After that, I started to really just like, I think I went insular in terms of like not really expressing that I was gay. It was just either you knew or you didn't. And I started to have all these great friendships form. And I started to really think that over the next year that I was like ready to take the stand and say that I was gay. And the first person that I was gonna say it to was gonna be my grandma. I wasn't gonna beat around the bush and say that I might like boys. I was gonna say that I was gay. But she had come down with cancer, had spread quite a bit through her body, and was on chemo. And so I knew that the timing was gonna be kind of off and gonna be hard. And I was like, this is gonna be the moment where I feel like I fully am like embracing who I am, because this is the person that really means the most to me. And I'm going to say it. I don't know why it took me so long to tell her, because like she is like literally the most loving person and so outspoken about gay rights too. It's just, I don't know why, I just like literally it took me so long to just like really embrace myself and just be comfortable telling anyone. Anyways, I remember like there was this one little moment, this one week in November where I was like, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna go into her room and I'm gonna tell her. And I was at school and I got the call that I was requested to leave school because my grandmother had died. And I'd known that my moment had passed then to tell her. And as I was walking back to my car to head to my grandma's to see her one last time. It's like so funny, that like ironic timing, but my car had been written all over in that car paint. Fag. On the same day that I was gonna head to my grandma's. I had some like gym shorts in my bag, and I grabbed those and I just wiped it off, smeared it off. And it's like all over. And I feel like, you know, at that moment I was like, it's really hard on me. Really, really tough. It pushed me to this point where finally I was like, you know what, like this is the straw that's gonna break this camel's back, because I'm going to just be so happy from here on out, because I'm gonna be free, I'm gonna be myself, I'm gonna be who I am. That I might have missed this opportunity to tell my grandmother that I was gay, but I'm not gonna miss any other opportunity. And you know, I feel like I took hold of that, like those moments where it was finally I, you know, took control back from those people who were so mean to me. I was like, you know what, like I don't care anymore. And gosh, I finally felt like I started to really embrace myself, because I just said, you know, at the end of the day, like I had no control over whether or not someone else was gonna throw a slur at me anymore. All I could control in the end was whether or not I was gonna say that I was proud to be gay. And I am, and I was at that moment, and I was so happy, and so happy that I like, even through the, you know, even through the shit that I went through personally, and you know, I was like, you know, this is gonna be what makes me. After that, for a while, I started to really, you know, like come into my own, went to Berkeley, and really became an out and proud gay man. Obviously now I have like a wonderful man in my life that I'm proud to constantly share my love for to the world. And I just want to say that, like, you know, coming out is such a process, and it's so different for every single person, and there's no one way or one right way to come out. There's no one right time to come out. You know, I feel like it's just a matter of learning to love who you are, no matter what your sexual orientation is, and just be love. So, I mean, that's kind of my coming out story. I just want to say thank you all for watching. I know that it's a little bit of a different video than we're typically used to posting on this channel. It's a little less giggly, but I feel like, and I know Brock does too, that it's important in getting to know who we are. Soon enough, you'll also have Brock's coming out story. And, you know, I just wanted to say thank you again. If any of you are feeling alone, or if you're struggling or having any negative thoughts, we'll be linking to resources in the video description. But again and again and again, thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to get to know us a little bit more with every other video. Alright, I love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. Have a great day.